I I am a bit under the weather. I'm like, when you feel like you're on the fence, you have no idea if you're actually sick or if you just feel weird. It's like I'm not sick, but am I? That's how I feel right now, but I'm starting to lean more towards the sick, I believe, which is a bummer because I just recently gave myself a good kick in the pants, Like I've started to steer away from the good habits I started to create, and I need to get back on those, like moving my body every day, drinking the water, eating healthy. I've had too much sugar and caffeine, and I can tell it's affecting my sleep. I am drinking too much caffeine later into the day, which is preventing me from getting that sleep I need, that early onset of sleep. It's just making it difficult. So, limiting my caffeine, and dang, is it hard to stay off my phone. It has become such a bad habit, and I just need to put it away. Anybody else with me here? So, I'm going to try to make it where 7 p.m. when I'm home in the evenings, phone puts away. Phone is put away. Not having it out. Focus on the time that I have with my fiance. Okay, so for those of you who don't know who I am, and you're like, who's this person just rambling on about her habits? My name is Megan Robert. I am a child sleep coach, postpartum doula, and former nanny. I am owner of After the Stork, and my main focus is on helping parents to get the rest, helping parents to help their children get the rest that they all need as a family in order to live their best lives. So I do that in a number of ways. Obviously, through educating you here, pushing out free content on my social media platforms. But my main ways of helping are to, one, help families that are trying to be proactive. So, expecting parents, parents of newborns, how to shape sleep over time. Helping those who are coming upon different transitions or milestones. So the 4-month sleep regression, I prefer to refer to it as sleep leap, because it is a time that sleep is actually developing and maturing, and that's why we go through that phase. How to help through that. The transitions of 3 to 2 naps, 2 to 1 nap, 1 to no nap. The crib to the bed. I generally, when I work with clients, explain to them what to expect in the future, and so I'll have past clients reach out to me when they know they're about to reach one of those milestones so that we can smoothly transition their child through it. Another way that I work with parents, and this unfortunately is the most common way, is I help those who are struggling. So parents of children who are not taking long naps, or they're taking very short naps or no naps at all, have a struggle at bedtime, wake frequently at night, or coming into mom and dad's bedroom, rising early in the morning. Generally, these are children who do not have the skill of putting themselves to sleep, and so when they are transitioning from one sleep cycle to the next, they wake up fully instead of just partially and then falling back to sleep, because they're needing whatever external guidance helped them to fall asleep to help them in the middle of the night or after one sleep cycle from a nap. So that is how I help, and if you want more information on that, you can see the step-by-step process at afterthestorksleep.com/what is entailed. Now, before we jump into things, I do need to go over my disclaimer. I am not a medical professional. I help families from a behavioral perspective, so these videos and all the content that I provide you, they are for educational and informational purposes only. They are meant to promote the general understanding of child sleep for parents and anyone who works with younger children. The information contained within these videos and the resources that I provide you, they are not intended for, and shall not be understood or construed as medical advice or substitute of medical advice. For any medical issues or concerns, please consult your pediatrician or other healthcare provider. A big one that we talked about last week, if your child snores or mouth breathes, reach out to your pediatrician, an ENT, a sleep specialist, to make sure there's no underlying medical issue preventing your child from getting the good sleep that they could be getting. If you want more information on that, I talked about that more in depth last week when I talked about sleep consolidation. It was the portion where I talked about protective arousals. So a recap for anyone who hasn't been with me over the past couple weeks. What I am doing here is every week I am touching on one of the 5 elements of healthy sleep habits as proposed by Dr. Mark Weisbluth in his book, Happy Sleep Habits, Happy Child. The 5 elements are sleep duration, sleep regularity, sleep consolidation, sleep schedule and timing of sleep, and naps. So we have talked about the first 3, sleep duration, sleep regularity, and sleep consolidation. And today we're going to be talking about the schedule, timing of sleep, its importance. And next week we are going to be talking about naps. If you want a brief discussion or a brief discussion of those 5 elements, you can get that at afterthestorksleep.com/elements of healthy sleep. Okay, so we're now going to dive into the timing of sleep and sleep schedules. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about when to pay attention to wake windows and when to pay attention to biological times, and what those are. Then we're going to talk about why is the timing so important. We'll talk about the red flags for an abnormal schedule, so what to look for, how to know, and then what are the reasons that abnormal schedules occur, and how can we troubleshoot that. But before we do jump into that, I would like to help set up the right mindset for you. I've heard this analogy before. It's one that I love, and it's in the book, this one, Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child, but I'm not sure if it was originally Dr. Mark Weisbluth's or someone else's. But I want you to think of sleep like food. You feed your child when they're hungry. You don't force feed them when they're not. Generally, they have a pretty set schedule of when they're eating. So it is the same for sleep. Also, you have certain type of food that's nutritious, and then you've got junk food. Same for sleep. This is where the timing of sleep is going to really matter. The timing of your child's sleep will determine if your child's getting good quality sleep or not. We'll talk about this more later, how the circadian rhythm and sleep pressure, how that all contributes to the timing of sleep. But if your child is sleeping and it's not at the right time of day, we consider that junk sleep. It is not going to be as restorative as if it were at the right time of day. So try to keep that in mind. You're going to let your child eat when they're hungry, and you're not going to force it when they're not. The same is for sleep. You can probably tell when your child is tired, so we want to try to let them sleep during the time of day that is going to allow them to get the best nutritious sleep that they can get. So when it does sleep organize, we talked about this. You're going to start noticing some of this information is going to be repetitive compared to the last couple weeks because these elements do overlap. We talked about newborn sleep development a tad, and we're going to talk about that again. Generally, when a baby is born, their sleep is not yet organized. Their circadian rhythm is not yet developed. Their brain is still developing. The type of sleep cycles is still developing. And so it is to be expected that a child is going to have sleep all over the place, all 24 hours for those first few weeks. Around 6 weeks, the night sleep starts to organize. So the child you'll notice that your newborn is going to have a longer length of sleep at the beginning of bedtime. Usually that's when that happens. You'll see it lengthen from about 3 to 4 and then gradually go to 8 hours. And this is generally the time when you can expect that to become more organized. This is also a time when bedtime gets moved up. Then day sleep starts to become more organized around 3 to 4 months when the circadian rhythm starts to become more developed. This is not yet a time to expect a set schedule. However, you will notice that your child's naps lengthen. You'll have 2 to 3 good long naps, and they're usually the first couple naps of the day, and then you'll have cat naps throughout the rest of the day leading up to bedtime. Between 4 to 6 months is when you can expect a schedule to unfold, and around 6 months is when focusing on a schedule is more important than just getting sleep whenever you can. Now that leads to discussing wake windows and bio times. So wake windows, we focus on wake windows for those first 16 weeks. So what are wake windows? Wake windows are referring to the time that your child wakes from a nap to the time that they're ready to go back down. Now, this might be surprising to some people, but for a newborn, those first few weeks, the wake window generally is 45 minutes. This means the moment your child wakes, start your clock. About 45 minutes after that, expect them to be ready to go down for another nap. Start helping with that process of putting them down. Yes, this is going to mean that for those first few weeks, it feels like all your baby does is sleep, eat, poop, sleep. Sleep, eat, poop, repeat. That's pretty much what you're going to expect. It's not a time when you're going to get a whole lot of playing time or wake time with them. Then this starts to increase 45 minutes to about an hour. Around 6 weeks, it will start to lengthen, and then you'll see it lengthen to about an hour and a half. So right now, first 16 weeks, we are focusing on their wake window and not on a set schedule. So this is where the timing of sleep is important, but not a sleep schedule. We want to focus on making sure that they don't get overtired, making sure that we're putting them down before they reach that state. If your child is crying, we want to look at a shorter wake window. If your child is crying in the newborn phase and it's time for bed, we've probably missed that sleep window just a little bit. Now, around 16 weeks, when the circadian rhythm does become more developed, you will see a schedule start to unfold. It's not going to be set yet. You're still going to need to focus on wake windows, so it's going to be a bit of focusing on wake windows, but also being attuned to, is a schedule unfolding, what's working for your child. Around 6 months, this is when you are going to start focusing more on the schedule, so the clock time or bio time, what works for your child's circadian rhythm, and that being consistent every day. Now, when I'm referring to these ages, something to keep in mind, these are adjusted ages. So if your child was born early, we want to consider when was your child's due date and what is 6 weeks after that? What is 16 weeks after the due date? What is 6 months past the due date? So if your child is born early, we need to give a little bit of extra time for that circadian rhythm to become more developed. So the best thing that you can do is be assertive and attuned to your baby's sleep needs, just as you would be attuned to your baby's need to eat. Now we're going to talk about the importance of timing. Why is it important? Well, one reason is to prevent overtiredness. By providing your child with good quality sleep, meaning it's happening at the right time of day when it can be restorative, you are helping to prevent overtiredness. If our children are not napping at the right time of day and they're still sleeping, there's a chance that it is not good quality, it's not restorative, so no matter if they slept or not, they're still going to be cranky and fussy when they are awake. You generally will experience a child who has decreased attentiveness, they have difficulty performing tasks, they're not as focused. All the things I've discussed previously when I've talked about red flags for overtired children, altered moods, they're more emotional, they don't regulate their emotions as well. They experience what something you might have experienced before, jet lag. It's similar to experiencing jet lag, or a shift worker, someone who works odd hours who maybe is sleeping the right amount of time throughout the day, but they're not sleeping at the right time for their body. This is what your child might feel like if they are not sleeping at the right time. So if you get that document that I mentioned earlier with the 5 elements of sleep, there's also a bonus document in there that is the red flags for overtired children. You can get that again at afterthestorksleep.com/healthy or elements of healthy sleep. So that's afterthestorksleep.com/elements of healthy sleep. And when you fill out the form and you receive the email, you'll get 2 documents, one that goes over the 5 elements, but also one that goes over the red flags for an overtired child. So if you know what the elements are, then that helps you figure out, okay, how can you help your child to not be overtired? If your child is getting the right amount of sleep, If you're doing really well with a regular bedtime, but your child's naps are all over the place or not at the right time, that might be something to adjust in order to help your child not have those symptoms of being overtired. Another reason that it is important, that the timing of sleep is important, is because we want our child's sleep to be in sync with their biological rhythms. Sleep is part of this. Eating is part of it. The way that our body regulates different systems within our body. So when our children are sleeping at the right time of day, and it's in sync with their biological rhythm, things all seem to work really well. If it's not, then that can throw them off. A couple things that we'll talk about in the future when I start to discuss the science of sleep, which I am itching to discuss because it is one of my favorite topics. And don't let the word science scare you. It's a very interesting, there's a lot of interesting information behind it. However, we will talk about that later, but to briefly touch on it. So there are two biological systems that help regulate our body and regulate our sleep. One of those is called sleep pressure. So sleep pressure, basically, when the longer that we're awake, the sleep pressure goes up, up, up. So the longer we're awake, the higher the sleep pressure is, the more tired we start to feel. So the longer we're awake, the more that we have a sleep drive. The other system is the circadian rhythm. We talked about this the other week, where the circadian rhythm is just a constant up and down, up and down. So the best time for a child to sleep is when the sleep pressure is high and the circadian rhythm is low. If we miss this low of the circadian rhythm, sleep pressure will still build. However, that gap between the sleep pressure and the circadian rhythm will be less. So your child's drive to sleep is going to be less. This is why having them nap at the appropriate times of day is really important. We want to catch the time of day when the circadian rhythm is low and their sleep drive is high. Okay, so some red flags to look for to know if your child's schedule is off. Generally, for older children or children who can communicate with you, they will complain about headaches and stomach aches later in the afternoon. So they will not appear to be sick, but they frequently have complaints of headaches and stomach aches. This is very similar to someone who has jet lag or a shift worker. These are common symptoms of having an abnormal schedule, an unhealthy sleep schedule. Another one to look for is, does your child lack energy or the drive that they once had? If they are low on energy and they just seem, out of place, these are signs that maybe we need to adjust their schedule to help them get the better quality sleep that they need. Overtired while having the other elements in place. So, your child is seeming overtired, all those red flags, but you know that they're getting the amount of sleep that they need, that they are going to bed at the regular time, that they're getting naps, things like that, but they're still lacking something. They're still experiencing that overtired state. Another way to know that your child's schedule might be off is for children that are able to take long naps. Like, your child can take long naps. However, occasionally they're short, or they started to be short and they used to take long naps. Now, this is for a child who's 16 weeks or older, that a child that has learned the ability to fall asleep on their own and connect sleep cycles. If they are taking short naps, they possibly are not napping at the right time of day. They might need an adjustment. Another way to know is that they have trouble falling asleep when you put them down for their naps or for bedtime. So those are some red flags. And now we're going to talk about some reasons for an abnormal schedule. These generally, unfortunately, come from something that, I guess it's not unfortunate because we have control over it, but it's often something that we, as either the parents or the caregivers, are doing. An abnormal sleep schedule usually evolves if an infant or young child are kept up too late at night, so their bedtime's too late, or their naps are not made a priority. So this often happens because a parent wants to play with their baby, And trust me, I get it. I don't have children of my own, but I was a nanny for 5 years, full time. And there were times where, man, I did not want to put the baby down for a nap. The baby was in a great mood, no signs of being tired. However, a well-rested child needs to be kept on a regular schedule, and they're not going to show you tired signs all the time if they are well-rested and sleeping at the right times. So try to avoid keeping your baby up because you want to play with them. Your child is unable to put themselves to sleep. So some parents will keep their children up late because their child is not able to fall asleep, and so they just wait until their child crashes due to exhaustion. We want to try to avoid this too. Generally, I see this happening from children who lack the skill to fall asleep on their own and transition between sleep cycles. If they were able to do that, then the parent would probably not keep them up because they're not able to fall asleep. The parent would be able to put them down for them to fall asleep. So if this is something you're struggling with, this is one of the main things I help families with, is to help your child learn that skill of falling asleep independently so that you don't have those bedtime struggles or struggles at nap time. Another big one is trying to fit in too many errands and expecting your child to nap on the go. Has a developed circadian rhythm, sleeping on the go is not going to provide quality sleep. And if it's not happening at the right time, again, not going to provide quality sleep. So try to prioritize nap time, plan your errands around nap time, and understand that sometimes we need to maybe make a shift in what we're doing. Maybe knock some things off our to-do list, get rid of them in order to make it so that the time that we're out running errands isn't as long. Another one that is similar to running errands is wanting to take your child to some kind of organized or scheduled activity. And I think that I need to do something in my community with this eventually, is to educate other people who aren't parents. So, like kinder music, Fit for Mom. I love Fit for Mom. Library baby garden. There's all these fun activities that are out there to take your children to. But make sure that you're taking them at a time that's not during a nap time. So sometimes these activities, they have different options where you can go to a time that's outside of nap time or right after, but sometimes they're during nap time. So take into consideration how important is that activity versus your child getting the rest that they need. Are there different options in order to socialize outside of the house if your child is one that stays home with either the nanny or with you? Another big one is working parents. Now, we've talked about this a little bit with bedtime, and this is something where you have to figure out what works best for your entire family. But generally, what will happen for a working parent is sometimes you have to leave work late, you have a long commute, your child's at daycare and they're not napping well at daycare. So sleep is just thrown off all around because bedtime's late, naps aren't going great. So some things that you can try to do is, first of all, show yourself a little bit of grace. Okay, you're trying to do the best that you can, but are there ways to work around this? I mentioned last week providing dinner at daycare so that you don't have that to do when you get home. Sometimes you're going to need to put your child to bed the moment you get home. And I know that sucks. That is no fun for a working parent. I already know that a lot of times working parents have this guilt around never having enough time for their child because they've got to work during the day. But your child getting the rest they need is going to be so much better than you trying to have quality time with a child who's fussy and cranky because they're tired. Are there ways to work around that? Can you have quality time in the morning? Can you have quality time on a day that you're not working? Can someone help you so that your child can maybe get home earlier in order for you to have that quality time? But keep in mind that the later bedtimes will contribute to a difficult time with naps. Now, something to note is a late bedtime is better than an extremely late bedtime. So having a late bedtime, putting your child to bed right away when you get home, and it being late versus getting home late and then keeping your child up is going to help your child have less of a difficult time with sleep than if you keep them up late, super late. Again, don't beat yourself up over this. Something that you can do is on the weekends, try to preserve naps and those early bedtimes when possible, especially if naps are not going well at daycare. All right, so some troubleshooting for these, abnormal schedules is first, adjust your child's bedtime based on your child's age and how long the previous nap was, how long they've been awake. Keep in mind that your child needs to go to bed at a certain time, and you know that time. So if you have a toddler or preschooler who wants to stay up later, you're the parent, you know more about what your child needs, and your child is not going to just automatically agree if they are wanting to stay up and play more. Again, the late bedtime versus a too late bedtime. It's better to have a late bedtime versus the too late. So put your child down the moment you can in order to keep them on an appropriate schedule. All right, so the takeaway message here is let your child sleep when they are tired, but also consider your child's biological clock. Keep in mind how old they are, wake window versus bio time, which one do you need to focus on, and try to preserve those naps and that bedtime as best as you can. Work around that when you can schedule so that your child is sleeping at the right time of day, getting that good quality sleep, because sleep begets sleep and sleeplessness begets sleeplessness. So help your child get the rest that they need by helping them sleep when they need. Next week, I will be discussing naps. So we've talked a lot about the timing of sleep being important, and next week we'll talk about when is the time of sleep important. When are naps generally happening? How many naps? And this will all depend on